what if you could become the world's strongest hunter? In solo leveling, that is exactly what happens to Jinwoo. But how does he go from being the weakest E-rank hunter to an unrivaled S-rank powerhouse? Buckle up, because we're about to take you on a journey through every arc of this epic series, breaking down all the key moments that shaped Jinwoo's incredible transformation. If you want to see more solo leveling videos here on the channel, drop a like and leave a comment for that YouTube algorithm. And of course, the best way to know that you want more solo leveling content is for you guys to subscribe. When we see a lot of people subscribing on a certain type of video, then we know you guys want more of that content, so go ahead and subscribe right now. Okay, so let's jump into the video, spoilers and all. 10 years before the start of the main story, mysterious gates appeared that connected the world of solo leveling to some sort of outside world. These gates actually lead to dungeons filled with monsters and magic. To combat these dungeons and make sure they close before the creatures from the inside come outside and destroy the world, there are a select few humans who have superhuman powers of their own, and these humans are known as hunters. As I said, hunters are sent to clear the dungeons so that the monsters within the gates do not gain access to our world, where they would wreak havoc and destroy everything. Each of these gates has its own difficulty, and dungeons where the monsters are stronger have far greater rewards. So yeah, this isn't just about saving humanity from danger, it's also about loot, greed, and ego. To determine if a hunter is strong enough to take on these dungeons, they are all assigned a rank based on their power. These classes run from S class through to E class. Now let's get into the first arc of the story, the D rank dungeon arc. The main story begins with the D-rank dungeon arc, and we are introduced to the main protagonist, Jinwoo. Jinwoo is an E-rank hunter who is widely regarded as the weakest hunter in the entire world. To earn money for his sister's education and his mother's healthcare expenses, he joins a raid group with his buddy, the B-rank healer, Lee Joo-hee. They set out on a completely normal raid to a D-rank dungeon, but unfortunately, things turn extremely dark as the gang discovers a hidden chamber deep within the gate. This was supposed to be just another D-rank dungeon where low-level hunters could gain experience and some profit. Because of the weak nature of the dungeon, even the lowest ranked hunter, Jinwoo, was allowed to enter. But what was thought to be a stroll in the park for most people turned out to be their worst nightmare. After completing the D-rank dungeon, a double dungeon, which is a dungeon within a dungeon, is suddenly activated. Ordinarily, this is an uncommon occurrence in the world of hunters, and the S-rank hunters should be called in when this happens. However, because this started out as a D-rank dungeon, Jinwoo and his team decide to proceed without alerting their superiors. As I mentioned earlier, greed often trumps safety in these types of situations, and the promise of more loot often leads to hunters risking their lives unnecessarily. It's kind of like me when I do a clickbait title hoping to reach a bigger audience and then I get bodied in the comments. Upon entering the dungeon, the hunter's expectations of easy loot are crushed as they come across sculptures that possibly represent death itself. Surprisingly, the world's weakest hunter turns out to be the sharpest of his party members, and he manages to figure out how the dungeon runs. But even though he figures out how the dungeon works and people are eventually permitted to leave, many are killed in the process, and Jinwoo is severely injured and loses a limb. He is left behind as a sacrifice so that the other survivors can escape in time. In this moment, Jinwoo is fully expecting to die, but his time appears to halt just before the monster delivers the final blow. And then a mysterious message appears before him, asking if he'll take the position of the player. With no other options besides saying yes or just dying, Jinwoo chooses yes. Jinwoo then awakens in a hospital bed, fully recovered from the injuries he experienced in the double dungeon. He realizes that this is related to his acceptance of the position of the player. Due to the peculiar circumstances surrounding Jinwoo's survival of the raid, Yoo Jinho of the Hunters Association questions him, but ultimately decides that nothing sinister is going on. Of course, he couldn't be more mistaken, as Jinwoo discovers the bizarre new talents he has gotten from the system as the player. This is the start of a wild ride for both Jinwoo and all the fans of the series. While the double dungeon event led to multiple tragic deaths, Jinwoo's sacrifice proved to be his greatest advantage, as he is now a player, a hunter who can level up. While he must still train hard and fight to get many of his skills and stats, as a hunter who can level up, Jinwoo's potential rises from the lowest to the highest. All the other hunters are unable to enhance their strength since it's pretty much predetermined, but with enough resolve and drive, Jinwoo can reach the very top. But okay, what is this system? Well, the system was designed in the style of a video game, with quests that offer unique rewards, a leveling system with various skills and stats, an unlimited inventory in which Jinwoo can store all types of magical items, and it even has a built-in store. The store is actually really cool, sometimes it's known as the shop. It's like a digital marketplace available through the system, and it provides a variety of things for purchase that are scaled to the player's current level. The store's currency is called gold, and it is acquired anytime the player kills a monster, completes a mission, or sells an item to the store. The shop sells consumables, which can refill life, mana, and stamina, also equipment, and of course, weapons. This system can only be utilized by Jinwoo due to his unique status as a player. This means that the others cannot access the store, not even the other hunters. Next up is the Instant Dungeon arc. In this arc, Jinwoo enters an instant dungeon in the subway after receiving a mystery key as a task reward from the system. It is a portal that he never would have crossed without his recent improvement, but his newfound power has given him newfound confidence. He battles wolves, goblins, and other enemies with his newfound prowess, leveling up with each kill. Jinwoo gains additional confidence in his talents and learns new skills along the way. Determined, he is ready to face the boss of the dungeon after greatly leveling up, and that boss is the blue venom-fanged Kasaka. The blue-fanged Kasaka appears as a big, dangerous, snake-like monster with distinctive blue teeth. Kasaka was a massive cobra the size of a house, with flashing amber eyes, blue scales, and a long black forked tongue. It has a menacing look that scares hunters who come across it, and its scales are robust and provide an effective defense against attackers. As a high-level monster, the blue-fanged Kasaka possesses incredible physical strength and agility. It moves rapidly and strikes with lethal accuracy. One of its most hazardous characteristics are its blue fangs, which contain strong venom. A Kasaka bite can cause severe poisoning, making it a serious threat to even the most skilled hunters. The creature's strong scales offer considerable defense, making it difficult to hurt with normal assaults. To beat its durability, hunters must use complex strategies and great talents. As a C-rank monster, it was initially able to overwhelm Jinwoo, shattering his sword in one swing and showing just how weak he truly was at the start of the story. Fortunately, Jinwoo's quick thinking saved him yet again. Eventually, Jinwoo wins the hard encounter when he uses his strength stats to strangle the creature to death, demonstrating that he is no longer the world's weakest hunter. However, only he is aware of his new powers. His rank at this time does not reflect his true strength, which kinda reminds me of our boy Saitama. The battle against the blue-fanged Kasaka serves as a pivotal moment for Jinwoo. This is his first battle after being saved from certain death and then being plunged headfirst into a new world governed by the system. After this battle, he begins to transform, both physically and psychologically. After the terror of the double dungeon, he has nowhere to go but up, which is what propels him in this arc. He has already experienced hell, he has already faced death, and nothing he endures from now on, at least for the time being, could ever compare to that. In addition, beating the Kasaka results in vital rewards, such as rare items or substantial experience points, which aid Jinwoo's growth. After this encounter with the Kasaka, Jinwoo's look starts to alter as he levels up. In comparison to the beginning, he is now taller, wider, sharper, and appears to be more mature. Now let's talk about the Dungeons and Lizards arc. Now that we've been thoroughly introduced to Jinwoo and to his new reality, we venture further into the realm of dungeons and hunters. For me, this is when the story really begins to pick up speed again following the explosive start of the first arc. This arc begins to shift the focus away from Jinwoo and the system and towards the larger picture. Essentially, this isn't too much different from what we've seen before, with Jinwoo being placed in more tough situations and battling and leveling up. But we do get a good sense of Jinwoo's personal growth, as well as the realities of the hunting industry. What I like in particular about this arc is that we are beginning to witness the ramifications of Jinwoo's actions, which will come back around later in the series. Jinwoo joins a well-established party to fill out a raid group, clearing a C-rank gate in order to capitalize on his newfound abilities and make some extra money. He is joined by another poor hunter, Yoo Jinho, a D-rank who is on his first raid. Due to being a D-rank hunter, Jinho is fairly weak and lacks battle experience, and because of this, Jinwoo is usually the one who does all the fighting during their raids together. But despite his lack of strength, Jinho does go on to play a much larger role in the story. Jinho's father is one of the richest men in the world, and he financially supports his son and gets him everything he needs for his hunting. Overall, Jinho comes off as a charming geek who provides comic relief throughout the series, thanks to his tendency for misinterpreting situations. Despite his charmingly naive personality, he is still extremely devoted and motivated. These characteristics are also seen in his relationship with Jinwoo, whom he regards as an elder brother figure, and he was even prepared to leave his father's side to assist him in forming his own guild. There are two recurring gags with Jinho that appear throughout the series. The first is his strange habit of dressing up in incredibly elaborate, costly, but equally worthless armor. The second is his inability to hold his alcohol. This arc gives us further information about the rules and conditions of the gates. Not just anyone is allowed to enter a gate, there are rules. You must have a party of at least 10 individuals, with half of them being the same rank as the gate or higher. We also get to learn more about the various classes and types of hunters. While they don't actually provide us with a cheat sheet, which would have been useful, we do have classes like fighters, mages, assassins, tankers, rangers, and healers. Fighting type hunters specialize at doing significant damage in close range battle, utilizing weapons like swords, axes, and knives. They are known for their powerful offense, effective defense, and incredible endurance, making them superb melee fighters. Mage hunters are the most versatile, with the ability to cast elemental spells, activate curses, and summon spirits to fight for them. As a result, a significant chunk of their skills are projectile assaults. But because they attack from a distance, mage-type hunters are typically at a significant disadvantage in close combat. Certain mages may specialize in certain areas of magic, such as barrier building or summoning magic, and they customize their abilities to their individual strengths and preferences. Assassins are known for their speed and agility, making them the quickest hunters around. They usually battle with small weapons, such as daggers or concealed blades. Their speed can make them very difficult to hit by hunters from other classes. Mages in particular are at a disadvantage against them due to the time required to cast their spells. Tankers, who specialize in defense, typically carry shields and wear heavy armor and are entrusted with covering the rest of the squad during raids. This allows the other hunters to complete their tasks more safely and effectively. Tankers are far more sturdy than the other classes and can withstand a lot more damage before falling down. Tankers employ skills like Taunt to draw enemies' attentions and assaults, allowing damage dealers like fighters and rangers to strike without fear of retribution. While defense is their main strength, tankers can also go on the attack with relative ease. To sustain their combat resistance, they frequently rely on healers for buffs and healing support. Both mages and rangers attack from a distance, but rangers specialize in physical assaults while mages specialize in magical ones. As a result, they typically use bows and crossbows and are charged with shielding their friends' blind areas during raids. Unfortunately, this puts them at a significant disadvantage in close combat. Unlike other classes, healers often act as support and rely on damage dealers to keep them safe in battle. Although healers specialize in repairing other hunters' wounds, they may also use buff magic to improve their own and their team's powers. However, because they primarily employ their talents for assistance, they are often at a significant disadvantage in battle. We also learn more about the dungeons during this arc, including the fact that their size is unrelated to the rating of the boss. Dungeons are actually pockets of the chaos world connected to the human world via gates. They often feature a horde of enemies headed by a boss and are open until the boss is defeated. Once the boss is defeated, the dungeon will remain open for about an hour before shutting down on its own. It should be mentioned that in order to minimize the loss of human life, a dungeon must be cleared within 7 days. If it is not, it will go through what is known as a dungeon break, which allows the monsters inside the dungeon to cross over to the human world and assault civilians. Now back to the timeline. While things go well at first, Jinwoo quickly realizes that the party's head, Hwang Dong-suk, has sinister intentions. Dong-suk's raid group recruits weak hunters to round out their party, only to abandon or murder them in the dungeon so they can keep their half of the riches. Jinwoo and Jinho are confined inside the boss chamber by Dong-suk's group, forcing Jinwoo to face the C-rank dungeon boss alone. The giant arachnid Buryura was the boss of the insect dungeon. It is a giant spider with a gray carapace on its abdomen and with 8 legs. And these legs are clothed in black armor with gray visible joints. It also has several bright red eyes. As a C-rank boss, it is a formidable magic beast capable of enormous strength, and it can spew corrosive acid. The boss of the insect dungeon was Jinwoo's most difficult opponent up to this point in the series. He had not expected to confront a C-rank boss alone, but for some reason, he felt no need to back down. Instead, he faced the big spider alone and instructed Jinho to remain out of it for his own safety. Giant arachnid Buryura, like Blue Venom Fang Kasaka, had armor that was too powerful for Jinwoo's dagger, prompting the hunter to devise a new plan on the fly. He defeated the gigantic spider by leaping into the air and stabbing it in the eye, then applying tremendous debuffs until Buryura was paralyzed and poisoned. So yeah, Jinwoo succeeds once again in defeating a major monster. But as far as humans go, Jinwoo never wanted to hurt anyone. He was excited to get stronger so that he could level up, so that he could take on more difficult dungeons and earn more money for his family. But unfortunately for the man who was once the world's weakest hunter, those who locked him up in the boss room did not leave him any options. These fellow hunters betrayed Jinwoo and Jinho in an effort to murder them and seize their belongings, leaving them to die a brutal death. But when Jinwoo didn't die, the hunters who betrayed him had no chance against him. Jinwoo was able to kill multiple men in an instant without breaking a sweat, demonstrating his impressive growth. The system actually instructed him to destroy the 6 foes in front of him, referring to those who had just attempted to stab him in the back. Jinwoo did what he had to do and he annihilated his opponents without showing emotion. After witnessing this power, Jinho is afraid of Jinwoo's latent might, but he is also grateful and grows to admire Jinwoo as his savior. Jinwoo's physical strength and height have already improved as a consequence of his leveling up. Again, while it may not appear rational for him to shift so rapidly, we do receive an explanation. As his numbers and stats improve, his body actually strengthens in order to adapt to all his new buffs. In this arc, we also get a better sense of Jinwoo's personality beyond just his raw might. He considers which stats would be most valuable to him at this point in the game, and he adds them accordingly rather than adding them randomly. This shows that he is thoughtful and strategic, which will be very useful for him in the long run. Next up is the Dungeon and Prisoners arc. This arc adds a bit of complexity to the story by tying up loose ends from earlier arcs and laying the groundwork for future events going forward. We are now beginning to realize the consequences of Jinwoo's actions. In the last arc, we know that he did what he had to do, but in doing so, he assassinated the younger brother of Hwang Dong-soo, an S-rank hunter active in the United States. Dong-soo is now determined to find Jinwoo and hold him accountable for his actions. I appreciate how this plot point is established early on, but it will be spread out across several arcs. Jinwoo reunites with and goes on a raid alongside the other survivors of the double dungeon, Lee Joo-hee and Song Chi-yul. The gang is ambushed by Kang Tae-shek, a B-rank assassin class hunter in the Hunters Association surveillance division led by Woo Jin-chul. Jinwoo then battles Kang in heated combat. Kang could have been a much more positive character in solo leveling, but instead he used his impressive B-rank skills as a hitman, taking out anyone he could for the right price. He never thought an E-rank hunter like Jinwoo could match his power, and he never would have guessed that the world's weakest hunter would also be stronger than him. Jinwoo defeated Kang with little effort because of his dungeon fighting experience. Jinwoo's fight against Kang demonstrates how far he has already fallen into the abyss. We gotta remember that he never wanted to kill other people, but the world and the system forced him to, and eventually transformed him into a cold, ruthless killer. He stabs Kang in the chest without even getting angry. This grants Jinwoo the rune of the assassin class skill, Stealth. Thanks to this buff, Jinwoo is able to camouflage with his surroundings and hide all traces of his presence, essentially turning himself both physically and magically invisible. Jinwoo's ability to escape another near-death experience surprises Jin-chul, but Chi-yul covers for him, seeing that Jinwoo must have reasons for wanting to conceal his strength. The Dungeon and Prisoners arc is also when Jinwoo first learns about Kandiaru's Blessing, a power that boosts his vitality. The great spellcaster Kandiaru's Blessing is Jinwoo's first skill after becoming a player, and it is triggered after he displays his courage in the double dungeon. This passive skill boosts Jinwoo's strength and health throughout his life, as well as the regrowth of his lost limbs following the traumatic battle in the double dungeon. The official description of the skill in the system states that it ensures Jinwoo's status, or quality of life and health, is immune to any irregularities in status and always maintains equilibrium. As simple as it seems, this skill includes a number of quite valuable boosts. Benefits include cleansing from all toxins, including alcohol, so the man never has a hangover, which is a legit superpower. He also has immunity to illnesses and faster recovery from exhaustion and injury. Furthermore, if Jinwoo's health points go below 30%, this skill will decrease all damage done to him by 50% from that moment forward, providing him with the necessary advantage in the most difficult encounters. So, Kandiaru's Blessing is an essential skill that keeps Jinwoo alive through all his many serious battles and challenges. Honestly, this was a very exciting and intense storyline as we were introduced to increasingly powerful enemies. I really enjoyed seeing the dark underbelly of the hunter world and the truth of being a hunter. Then we have the Yoo Jinho Raid Party arc. This is one of the smaller arcs, and it is basically more raiding and combat. By this point, people are starting to realize that Jinwoo isn't as weak as his rank suggests. We also learn more about how a person would obtain permission to enter a gate. Hunters use the same rank structure as gates in solo leveling. The weakest hunters fall into the E rank, while the most powerful hunters are the S rank. E rank hunters, such as Jinwoo, are regarded as exceptionally weak and slightly above average humans, hence gates of the same grade require less effort or ability to pass. The amount of magical energy is the key factor driving these rankings, and higher ranked gates are larger. For example, S rank gates resemble storms, whereas lesser ones are only doors. This ranking system for gates does not apply to hunters themselves, as it is impossible to determine someone's hunter rank simply by looking at them. A mana meter, which utilizes mana crystals, is essential to determine an individual's rank. The E-rank hunters are frequently assigned to tedious, non-combat tasks, while the higher ranks are expected to battle their way through dungeons and clear the corresponding gates. As previously stated, gates must be cleared within a specific time frame, which is 1 week, otherwise a dungeon break could occur. Likewise, after defeating a dungeon boss, the gate will permanently close after 1 hour. As a result, most guilds and groups in solo leveling will have their weaker members acquire mana crystals and essence stones early on in the journey. This way, the loot is safely collected, and the party may exit a dungeon long before the gate closes. It's also worth mentioning that hunters are of course the only people who ever enter these gates, and for a good reason. Mana crystals are made of pure magical energy. This makes them helpful in dungeons where technological equipment does not work. Their magical abilities also make them valued in the outside world, where hunters sell them to increase their income. There are also essence stones, which may be found in monster corpses and are often sold for a high price. That said, their worth is dictated by the monster and dungeon's rank. Aside from being sold, they may be used to forge weapons with exceptional powers. Therefore, it's worth a hunter's time to mine these resources after completing a dungeon. It's not the most exciting work, but it still makes sense financially. Even the most inexperienced hunters, such as Jinwoo, possess enough intrinsic magical energy to be regarded superior to human strength and power. Even so, these types of weak hunters are usually used to collect materials in a dungeon, with much more powerful hunters conducting the real battles. No matter how well trained or equipped they are, a typical person is completely defenseless while entering a gate. That is why only hunters are allowed inside. But back to the timeline. Jinwoo teams up with Jinho to complete raids as a 2-person team, allowing them to legally enter and finish C-rank dungeons. They employ a force of hunters to wait outside the dungeons in order to make their raids legitimate. Jinwoo and Jinho continue to clear the dungeons on their own at breakneck speed, but this does not go unnoticed. An Sang-min, the chief of the White Tigers Guild's second management office, tries to hire Jinwoo, but Jinwoo is much too expensive. An happens to be a pleasant and very perceptive man with a good eye for talent, and he was the first person to realize all on his own that Jinwoo was much stronger than his rank. Despite not being able to recruit Jinwoo at this moment, An refuses to give up and commits himself to recruiting Jinwoo for his guild at any cost, especially since he obtained Jinwoo's phone number from his message. Now let's talk about the job change arc. The job change arc is intended to test and exhibit all of Jinwoo's skills thus far, since the dungeon he enters is filled with beings that require diverse kinds of skills to overcome. This arc also makes it evident that Jinwoo gets really lucky at times, which I'm not sure whether it's the system's method of keeping him alive despite placing him in all these circumstances, like to make him stronger or something like that, because some of the things that happen are a little too convenient, but that could just be me overthinking it. The system is beginning to expand with the introduction of items that Jinwoo can use, but that are invisible to others. The dungeon in this arc is a little different from your average dungeon. The quick dungeons function similarly to game side quests, with the sole objective of Jinwoo's being leveling up by fulfilling the mission criteria. A job change dungeon is a special dungeon created by the system for Jinwoo. Jinwoo visits a weird new instant dungeon after accepting a quest invitation. This dungeon was unlocked once Jinwoo completed the conditions to improve his abilities. Inside the dungeon, there are knights, magicians, archers, and assassins, all of whom are night magic beasts. The dungeon resembles the interior of a medieval castle, complete with medieval-themed magic beasts. After making his way through this dungeon, Jinwoo encounters a formidable red knight guarding an empty throne, Blood Red Commander Igris. Jinwoo's duel with Igris is as amazing as solo leveling gets. Blood Red Commander Igris is one of the most visually appealing characters in the series, with blood red armor covering every inch of his body. He has a long, flowing crimson mane that complements his red weaponry, making him appear as ferocious as he does. When Jinwoo discovers him, he faces his most formidable opponent yet. Igris opens the fight by flying at Jinwoo at breakneck speed, leaving the reawakened hunter little time to respond. After throwing Jinwoo around like a ragdoll and then brutally fighting him into the throne behind them, Igris prepares to kill him with his sword, but he's caught off guard when Jinwoo blocks the weapon with his bare hands and then drives his dagger into the knight's left eye, knocking him off balance. Jinwoo quickly snatches up the dagger from his inventory and uses fatal strike skills to repeatedly stab Igris in the exposed area below his neck. Igris, unable to fight any longer, surrenders silently as Jinwoo slams his blade into his head, causing his eyes to flicker out as he dies. He beats Igris the Red and claims his reward, which includes the S-rank helmet Igris was wearing, a runestone for the skill Ruler's Hand, and a teleportation stone for the next round of battle. However, this final encounter did not mark the end of the raid as Jinwoo had thought. Jinwoo is shocked to learn that he must face even more relentless waves of adversaries. The longer he survives, the more advancement points he receives to spend on a higher class. And just as Jinwoo approaches his limit, an enemy knocks the teleportation stone from his grasp. Jinwoo is hurled across the royal chamber and hits a pillar hard. Surrounded by infinite knights and lacking his teleportation stone, he is desperate and pushed to his physical limit. He fights back with everything he has left, using just his bare hands, as he has no mana for his skills and his tiredness is at its peak. He refuses to give up despite running out of stamina, soaking in sweat, and having his hands sliced and bleeding. Night after night is defeated, yet they keep coming. Jinwoo is haunted by memories of being named the weakest hunter of all mankind, and he hears the insulting remarks of his old companions. Jinwoo then realizes that in order to win, he must kill all the mages who summoned the monsters. Jinwoo receives a job change to the Necromancer class after fighting the final undead mage and leveling up. Notifications appear one after another in front of Jinwoo. Because he endured so long in the last stage and destroyed all his adversaries, the Necromancer class was elevated to Shadow Monarch. To extract a shadow and claim it for his army, Jinwoo must use the command word he chose, Arise. He summons 30 shadow troops, the maximum number permitted for the player at the present level. And Jinwoo realizes there is another opponent nearby who he can try to recruit into his army, Igris the Red. Jinwoo commands the Knight Commander to rise, but he fails twice. With only one try remaining, Jinwoo delivers an impassioned speech, urging Igris to join him and fight for someone rather than protecting an empty throne. And the Knight Commander finally arises. Jinwoo renames Igris from the Blood Red Commander Igris to just Igris. Igris joins the Shadow Army, which now kneels before Jinwoo. And Jinwoo's character development continues, not just physically, but also mentally. After concentrating on raising his power, he suddenly shifts gears to improve his IQ. This also demonstrates Jinwoo's continued learning and gradual strength gains. With Igris, the Blood Red Commander, we also realize that some of the monsters are more clever than we might have expected, implying that there is more to the story than meets the eye. In the end, this arc leaves us in a really good situation. Jinwoo has grown significantly, and we learned a lot more about the system and its potential. The Red Gate arc. The Red Gate arc effectively upped the ante by delving further into the system and how it affects everything around Jinwoo. Jinwoo accompanies Han Song-hee on a raid after discovering she aspires to be a hunter. She is a newbie E-rank hunter and one of his sister's friends. Because of this, he aims to put her in jeopardy and expose her to the dangers that come with hunting in order to persuade her to reconsider her desire for becoming a hunter. Obviously, he wants to protect her because becoming a hunter could lead to her putting herself into a situation where she gets herself killed. Jinwoo reaches out to An of the White Tiger Guild to get spots in the White Tiger Guild's training exercise for new recruits. While we got a little taste of them in previous arcs, guilds are making more appearances and becoming increasingly important to the overall story. Here we see that with the rise to prominence of the White Tiger Guild, one of Korea's strongest guilds. Now, guilds are organized groups of hunters who raid gates and clear dungeons together. The guild master is a guild's leader, and for the top guilds across the globe, the majority of guild masters are going to be S-rank hunters. Premier guilds are well known for aggressively seeking out top-level hunters and paying them big wages and incentives if they achieve a high enough rank. Because of their authority and established status, these guilds provide a higher level of protection for their members and often prepare their raids well ahead of time. Lower level guilds frequently hire hunters of various ranks and enter dungeons beyond their abilities, resulting in increased fatality rates and much worse safety for its members. As a result, joining one of these guilds is often frowned upon due to the hazards involved. Independent hunters who are not linked with any guild in particular are also permitted to access gates and complete dungeons, but they must follow all the regulations imposed by the Korean Hunters Association before they are allowed in. Now, the raid that they end up actually participating in this arc goes horribly wrong as the gate transforms into a rare red gate, which traps the raid group within. Aside from its crimson color, a red gate differs from a standard gate in that it locks off its entrance after someone steps through it, and this keeps the hunters within and prevents anybody else from entering. The gate will then remain closed until one of three things happens. Either the boss is destroyed, the entire raid party is killed, or a dungeon break occurs. Adding to the risk, the lowest difficulty level of a red gate will be B rank, so that puts the hunters in jeopardy unless they have at least one A rank or higher hunter on their side. The climate within a red gate is generally extremely unpleasant, ranging from a searing hot desert to a frozen icy meadow. So in addition to the possibility of being killed by monsters in the dungeon, hunters inside the gate also face the additional risk of dying from exposure because of environmental factors such as heat stroke or frostbite or starvation. This makes red gates far more dangerous than standard B rank or even A rank gates. Time is also extended inside the red gates, to the extent where 1 day inside the gate equals 1 hour in the human world. So it's like having a hyperbolic time chamber in hell. Despite their exceptional danger, red gates are hard to foresee since they appear to be ordinary blue-colored gates until humans actually go through them. They also stop radiating mana after shutting off, which makes it impossible to precisely evaluate their mana levels from that point on. Okay, now inside the red gate, after Baruka and the Snowfolk defeat A-rank hunter Kim Chul, Jinwoo resurrects him as a soldier of his shadow army, renaming him Iron. Iron is a loose cannon who tends to go overboard in battle, usually causing excessive destruction with his antics. Iron takes pride in his skills and becomes easily frustrated when his opponents prove to be immune to his taunt skill. Iron looks like he did in life, wearing the same armor and wielding the same weapons. He also has a light purple glow as a shadow. Iron's axe grew larger and acquired a smoky quality when he evolved to Elite Night Grade. With Iron at his side, Jinwoo overcomes Baruka. Unfortunately, just 5 hunters from the raid team survive. This event catches the attention of the White Tigers Guild head, Baek Yoon-ho, who is now determined to recruit Jinwoo at any cost. The Demon Castle Arc. The Demon Castle arc showcases a mystery man being apprehended during a dungeon raid after being discovered inside a gate. Meanwhile, we also see that the ants on Jeju Island appear to be rapidly evolving. As all of this is going on, Jinwoo's initial agreement with Jinho to perform 19 raids alongside him is finally fulfilled, and he looks forward to his next assignment. This moves us swiftly into the Demon Castle arc. In the Demon Castle storyline, Jinwoo visits the castle, which turns out to be an S-rank dungeon created by the system and containing the formula for the holy water of life. The Demon Castle looks like a demolished version of Seoul, riddled with broken, fiery buildings. It had 100 floors and 4 bosses, and it was a dungeon as vicious and unforgiving as it sounds. The first floor boss is Cerberus, the 50th floor boss is Vulcan, the 75th floor boss is Meltis, and on the final floor, floor 100, the boss is Baran. According to the Shadow Monarch Ashborn, the Demon Castle's look is based on a version of Seoul from an alternate timeline in which the conflict between the rulers and the monarchs destroyed the human world and killed off humanity. As I said earlier, the really interesting thing about this dungeon is that it contained the formula for the Holy Water of Life. The Holy Water of Life is a mystical elixir that, when taken, can heal any sickness, making it the only known remedy for eternal slumber. Jinwoo, feeling powerful enough to conquer the Demon Castle, uses the key to begin his trek up its 100 floors. He enters a region filled with fire and brimstone and is instantly accosted by Cerberus, the Demon Castle's first protector. Cerberus is a massive black dog with 3 heads, glaring red eyes, and prominent fangs, similar to the actual Cerberus from Greek mythology. The left and middle heads have flaming orange hair and brown horns, while the right head has a gray mask on its face and a brown fur mane. Cerberus, an A-rank magical beast, possesses incredible strength, durability, and speed. Cerberus can increase his strength by double for 3 minutes at a time. He is totally resistant to the effects of Kasaka's Venom Fang owing to his greater strength, and he easily overpowers Jinwoo in their battle. Jinwoo's struggle against Cerberus was actually amazing to witness. If he thought that his battles were difficult before, Cerberus took them to a whole new level. Jinwoo comes close to death several times throughout the struggle and is on the verge of giving up for the first time since his reawakening. During this epic struggle, Jinwoo must dig deep and find a new source of confidence in himself. In the end, he barely pulls it off, slaying the demon dog, gaining a lot of HP, and living to fight another day. He eventually reaches floor 75, where he battles the Lich King Metus. Metus, also known as the Guide of the Departed Souls, was physically intimidating, standing almost twice as tall as an ordinary adult human. He had a skull-like face mask, curled black horns, and bright red eyes. Metus donned a huge bone necklace and a torn brown shawl over his tattered black cloak, as well as a dark green tassel around his waist. His entire look emphasized his status as a necromancer, conveying both decay and magical menace. Because Metus was a high-ranking necromancer demon, his personality featured overpowering hatred that he radiated in battle rather than through direct communication. He had no hesitation in generating a massive army of undead to combat all invaders, and he exuded an uncanny calm confidence in his powers until he confronted a more formidable adversary. Jinwoo, who uses his own army of shadow soldiers, quickly recognized Metus' expertise in necromancy. True to his title, the Guide of the Departed Souls summoned thousands of undead to overwhelm Jinwoo and his summons. Ultimately though, Metus was quickly destroyed in a single battle thanks to Jinwoo's greater strength, quick maneuvering, and his ability to lead his own zombie army. When Metus died, Jinwoo inherited the following. The Demon Sovereign Necklace completed the Demon Sovereign accessory set. Metus' necklace contained spring water from the Forest of Echoes, one of the rare elements used to create the divine water of life. And there was also a vast quantity of demon souls, which greatly aided Jinwoo's progress towards finishing his goal. This dungeon, much like the Job Change arc, has a unique mission in the form of Soul Collection, which was an excellent way to break up the action sequences. And one more thing I want to say before we move on is that I really enjoyed that as Jinwoo's level grows, so do the numbers of points necessary to level up. This helps to slow down his growth at least a little bit and make his level ups feel much more impressive once he actually achieves them. The Retesting Rank Arc. After a couple of longer arcs, we now have a smaller one, the Retesting Rank Arc. Now by this time in the story, Jinwoo has 2/3 of the components needed to make the Holy Water of Life for his terminally ill mother. Jinwoo comes to the Hunters Association to retest and get a new ranking. The Hunters Association is keen to know whether Jinwoo had a reawakening. Jinwoo has actively been avoiding this retesting for far too long, but he understands that he will need to undergo a retesting to determine his present level. This is clearly understandable since he is clearly above the level that he was when he started, and he wants to take on higher level raids and earn more money. And yeah, guess what? Jinwoo is identified as an S-rank hunter during the examination. Jinwoo's insane power level captures everyone's attention, and even the most important and wealthy guilds make efforts to recruit him into their guild. Jinwoo is officially confirmed to be South Korea's 10th S-rank hunter following the retesting. However, his official ranking will not be released for another 3 days. Jinwoo then meets with Gun Hee-go of the Hunters Association, who offers him a position. Jinwoo declines, knowing that such a position would hinder him from continuing to raid dungeons and level up. Now this arc clearly isn't action heavy, but it reflects an important transformation in both the story and Jinwoo's character. Until now, Jinwoo has done his best to conceal his new abilities. With him now retesting his rank, his status as Korea's 10th S-rank hunter would become global news, and so all eyes are now firmly fixed on him. It's really nice to see the world finally accept Jinwoo, and don't forget that the Retesting Rank arc introduces Jinwoo's father, Sung Il-hwan, into the scene as one of Korea's S-rank hunters. So unlike poor Deku, Jinwoo actually does have his father show up at some point in the series. The Hunters Guild Gate arc. Now this arc is where the plot takes a little bit of a backseat in order to make way for us to learn more about the world and the characters of the story. The Hunters Guild arc is unquestionably one of the strongest story arcs in Solo Leveling, owing to the fact that it allows us to see more of Cha, one of the few female side characters. We don't learn much about her here, except that she is extremely sensitive to smells, but she is of course very important to the rest of the story. Cha is also one of Korea's S-rank hunters and the vice guild master of the Hunters Guild. She is an attractive young woman with gray eyes and blonde hair styled in a bob cut. She is tiny in stature, but don't let that fool you. During raids and in combat, she generally wears crimson armor and wields a black sword with a silver hilt. When she uses her skills, her eyes blaze yellow. Cha comes across as serious and calm and also concerned about the lives of others, which, combined with her meticulous nature, causes her to develop a habit of patrolling around the boss's lair to ensure that the guild workers, such as the mining and hauling teams, are not going to be taken by surprise and harmed, because these are usually the people who cannot defend themselves. Even after achieving S rank, she is dedicated to sword training and continues to take classes with Chi-yul. Unlike most higher-ranked hunters, she shows no bias towards lower-ranked hunters, respecting Chi-yul, a C-rank hunter who polished his talents over the course of his life. She actually believes that she could not defeat him via swordplay alone. While waiting for his official rank to be declared, Jinwoo joins a raid with the Hunters Guild to experience what a higher-ranked gate is like, and eventually enters an A-rank dungeon. Here we learn more about dungeon structure and how higher-ranking dungeons are approached. Because they are larger and more risky, the duty of shutting one of them down is divided among 3 groups. There is the Strike Squad, the Mining Team, and the Hauling Team. If nothing unexpected happens, the system will be reasonably efficient. Jinwoo joins this raid party as a magic crystal miner, trying to maintain a low profile. There he meets Cha, who notices something unusual about him right away just by being in his presence. Cha gets so fascinated by Jinwoo that she follows him on another A-rank dungeon raid. Jinwoo rejoins the crew the next day, but their second raid does not go as well. Once they enter the gate, a force of high orcs surrounds the raiding team. The orcs take the group to their commander, a formidable orc mage called Kargalgan. Kargalgan is a high orc with a vibrant red complexion, brilliant red eyes, and grey hair. Unlike the rest of his kind, he wears a torn brown hooded cloak, a greyish-white face mask that only reveals his eyes and lower jaw, and a necklace composed of human skulls with red armored shoulder guards. Kargalgan sees mankind as no more than insects, and he also gets great joy from violence. As the boss of a top-tier A-rank dungeon, Kargalgan was roughly as powerful as the ordinary S-rank hunter. He was also extremely skilled at using magic spells and appeared to have no limit on how many he could cast. Nevertheless, Jinwoo and his shadow soldiers defeat him and all the orcs. Jinwoo uses a rise on the orcs, renaming their commander Kargalgan as Tusk, his most recent acquisition. I guess he didn't want to have to keep saying Kargalgan all the time, so he just named him Tusk. Tusk is revived and becomes one of Jinwoo's most powerful magic users, noted for his deadly area of effect spells and excellent intellect. He is a very important member of Jinwoo's shadow army, especially during large-scale confrontations. As for Jinwoo, I really like that in this arc he shows that despite his great power, he is still not overconfident. Despite being such a strong, overpowered character, he is still very careful and cautious when entering a dungeon. The Hunter's Guild Gate was overall an action-packed story arc, and personally I loved seeing Cha being so surprised by Jinwoo's abilities. The Return to Demon Castle arc. In this arc, Jinwoo makes his final visit to the Demon Castle. This arc had a bunch of elements within it, including a lot of fighting, exciting new answers to important questions, and interesting character debuts. Jinwoo collects 2 of the 3 elements for the Holy Water of Life during his first journey to the Demon Castle. So, he now returns to the castle to gather the final and 3rd item required to complete the recipe. Jinwoo approaches the Demon Castle with more preparation and conviction than ever before, hoping to conquer the remaining floors and beat Baran, the king of the demons. I liked how rather than being forced to complete the entire dungeon all at once, Jinwoo has the option of returning to it as he grows stronger. Not only does this allow the author to get the most out of this plot point, but it also demonstrates just how far Jinwoo has come since first entering the dungeon. On the higher floors of the Demon Castle, Jinwoo encounters Essel, a demon girl who can communicate with him and even offers to help him. Essel is actually a demon noble and the eldest princess of the Radiru clan. Essel is a demon girl with long purple hair, enormous red eyes, distinct red eye marks, and prominent fangs. She also has a remarkably young and human-like look, as Jinwoo noticed when he first saw her at Demon Castle. Despite being a demon, Essel has an open, honest, and kind nature. She's also a bit greedy and a bit shameless, as seen by her willingness to beg for her life after all of her knights were slaughtered by Jinwoo. And she also declared that her knights would gladly sacrifice themselves as long as she lived. At the same time, she can be sly and manipulative, as seen by her attempt to stab Jinwoo in the back after he dropped his guard against her, which doesn't go well for her, by the way. Essel makes Jinwoo pledge not to hurt any members of her tribe in exchange for taking him to the final boss. Jinwoo seeks her assistance in navigating the castle, and he finally reaches the 100th floor and confronts the mighty king of the demons, Baran. Originally, Baran was a huge and strong demon with gray skin, bright white eyes, flame-like white hair, a long tail, and 4 gray horns on his head. He also donned an intricate gray helmet and pale yellow armor across his shoulders and crotch. When Kandiaru rebuilt Baran decades later to serve as the Demon Castle's ultimate boss, he had red eyes rather than white and wore no helmet. As the king of demons and one of the 9 monarchs, Baran had enormous power. However, considering the strength of the other monarchs, it is quite likely that the clone of Baran Jinwoo battled against in the Demon Castle was actually significantly weaker than the real Baran. Still, he exhibited enormous physical strength. He hit Jinwoo hard enough to stun him and easily drive him to the defensive with his assaults. Baran could spit lightning from his mouth, providing a stun debuff to his enemies as an additional effect. He could also select whether to use it as an AoE strike or to target a specific opponent. Even though Jinwoo has encountered many formidable foes, he has never met anybody like Baran before. After the Architect and Igris, Jinwoo's next strongest opponent was definitely Baran. But thanks to Essel's distraction, Baran was eventually vanquished when Jinwoo severed his left arm and struck him in the jaw with everything he had, killing him once and for all. Even though the fight against Baran was difficult, Jinwoo's fast thinking helped him achieve final victory. After Baran was defeated, Jinwoo took the shadow from his mount Kaiselin's body and called it Kaisel because he couldn't recall the beast's original name. Unfortunately, because Kaisel was only useful for flying and not fighting, Jinwoo rarely used them during the story, summoning the beast only when he wanted to go by air and couldn't use Shadow Exchange. So it's kinda like using Fly in a Pokemon game. You might not use a specific flying Pokemon in battle, but you still need him to get around the map. In this arc, Jinwoo also obtained the last ingredient for the Holy Water of Life, which he uses to treat his mother's condition. I know this is a fantasy and everything, but it's just such a cool concept. Like, imagine being able to do this in real life. This arc also introduced the concept of the national level hunter, or the best of the world's hunters. Following the demise of the dragon Kamish, the 5 S-rank hunters who killed him were each granted authority equivalent to that of an entire nation as a prize for their efforts. From there, the title National Level Hunter was created. These hunters are considered to be beyond S-rank since they are significantly stronger than most other S-rank hunters and have amazing powers that are unique to them. Each of them has passed at least one S-rank gate. This is the minimum prerequisite for anybody wanting to join their ranks. As a result, they are regarded as the world's strongest hunters, and they live like kings, wielding enormous power over society and basically doing anything they want. The 4 national level hunters are Thomas Andre, the strongest hunter in America. China's number 1 is Liu Zhigang. Then there's Christopher Reed, another of America's strongest hunters. And India's number 1 hunter, Siddharth Bachchan. The Jeju Island arc. This arc is one of the best arcs in all of Solo Leveling. It is so intense and it offers nothing but unrelenting chaos, real edge of your seat stuff. One of the most essential plot elements in Solo Leveling is an event that occurred on Jeju Island around 4 years before the start of the series. This incident is such a key focus in the story that the anime begins with a preview of the type of challenge that awaits anybody courageous enough to venture there. 4 years before the events of Solo Leveling, an S-rank gate opened on Jeju Island, a self-governing region in South Korea famed for its pristine landscape and the existence of the last remaining indigenous Jeju people and their critically endangered language. When the gate appeared, Korean S-rank hunters were significantly weaker than they are now, and they failed to conquer the dungeon. This resulted in what is possibly the series' biggest dungeon break. Because the gate couldn't be closed, the magical creatures and monsters on the other side of the gate made their way into our realm. Enormous magical ants emerged, killing hundreds of innocent inhabitants, and this eventually led to Jeju Island being abandoned by humans because it had become an unforgiving wasteland populated with incredibly deadly creatures. Now, the Korean government actually attempted multiple times to send hunters to Jeju Island in order to reclaim it from the monsters, but they failed each time. The third Jeju Island raid, which took place roughly a year before Solo Leveling started, resulted in the death of the S-rank hunter Eunseok, Korea's pride hunter. This third raid served as the backdrop for the Solo Leveling's anime opening, and it depicts the entrance of multiple S-rank hunters as well as the troops of the White Tiger Guild rescuing their fellow hunters from imminent death against enormous ants. Following Eunseok's death, the Korean government decided to end future attempts to reclaim the island. White Tiger Guildmaster Yoon-ho is traumatized by the events that took place on Jeju Island. He suffers from survivor's guilt and trauma over the death of Eunseok. The Jeju situation got even worse when the ants began flooding into the island, and even the weakest ants proved to be a challenge for some of the toughest hunters. Beyond the red foot soldiers, there are white soldier ants, each several times stronger than the regular ones, and there is also an ant queen. The queen gives birth to all the ants, who eat anything living that they can find, and the more the queen consumes, the more genetic material she may pass on to her offspring. When the Korean government abandoned Jeju Island following the tragedy of the third attack, they assumed that the ants would be restricted to that region. Nevertheless, after years of controlling the island, the ants eventually ran out of food. Spurred on by a desire for more food, the ants finally obtained the ability to fly, making the Jeju Island situation a global concern as ants began assaulting and feasting on unsuspecting humans on the adjacent Korean mainland. Choi Jong-in's decision to spearhead yet another Jeju Island invasion stems from the stain on his reputation and the loss of life that happened under his leadership during the last raid. The fact that the island is still swarming with magical monsters poses a huge risk for the Korean government and for other nearby nations. due to the impending threat posed to both countries, a fourth attack is launched with Korean and Japanese hunters. But it goes even worse than the last one. The raid party consists of 16 S-rank hunters, including 10 from Japan's Draw Sword Guild and 6 from Korea. Their strategy was meant to be simple. The Japanese hunters would pull out the ant drones while the Koreans knocked out the nest before the majority of the ants could learn to fly. Instead, the Ant King ruthlessly slaughters 8 out of 16 and almost kills them all. Jinwoo eventually emerges from the demon castle among the chaos, only to learn how bad the situation has gotten on Jeju. He then goes into combat against the Ant King. The Ant King was actually the hidden boss of the Jeju Island S-rank gate and one of the most powerful monsters to appear in the entire series. The Ant King is a big, muscular humanoid ant with a black exoskeleton, bright red eyes, sharp claws, 2 little pincers protruding from his belly, and 4 translucent ant wings. The Ant King is an arrogant and vicious guy who wished to battle a worthy opponent above all else, as seen by his repeated demands to face the king of the Korean and Japanese hunters. He also took great pleasure in his position as the top of the food chain, and he was shocked to learn that there were others out there that were stronger than him. The Ant King has enormous physical strength. As proof of this, he was able to knock down Cha in a single blow, kill Goto Ryuji in 2 blows, slay 6 Japanese S-rank hunters with a single strike, and punch Jinwoo hard enough in the face to make him bleed from the mouth. The Ant King could also move at incredible speeds, as seen by his ability to keep up with Jinwoo's moves throughout their combat. Not only that, but the Ant King exhibited incredible physical durability, as seen by his ability to endure Jinwoo's blows for an extended period of time. To make matters worse, the Ant King was also able to acquire the abilities and knowledge of those creatures that he managed to swallow, which gives me major Chimera Ant vibes. Eventually, Jinwoo resurrects the formidable A-rank healer Min Byung-gyu, who was killed in combat, in order to cure the others. The Ant King sensed Jinwoo's presence on the island and flew back to the Queen's chamber for a second time to deal with his new enemy. When the Ant King saw Jinwoo caring for the others inside, he lost no time in starting the battle by punching him straight in the face. To his astonishment, Jinwoo not only survived the attack, but he was barely injured, with just a little scratch on his lip. Having finally found a worthy opponent, the Ant King begins to trade blows with Jinwoo, using every ability in his armory in an attempt to win. This includes his strength, speed, his poison, and even his army of ants, but ultimately it was to no avail, and Jinwoo quickly neutralized them all with his incredible power. As he saw Jinwoo's shadow army massacre his siblings, the Ant King realized he couldn't win, and he attempted to run. But Jinwoo stopped him by telekinetically slamming him into the ground with ruler's authority. Terrified for his life, the Ant King furiously attempted to crawl away, but Jinwoo used his mutilation skills on him, murdering the beast once and for all. Jinwoo, with the assistance of Cha and Byung-gyu, kills the Ant King and Queen, and after killing the Ant King, Jinwoo retrieved its shadow to add it to his army. When the shadow demonstrated the capacity to communicate with him and requested a name, Jinwoo gave him the name Beru and sent him out to destroy the remaining ant colony. Beru, being a martial grade shadow and the Ant King's shadow, is a very strong entity. He is also one of Jinwoo's strongest shadows. Beru, who was bred to murder, takes pride in his prowess and has an apparent bloodlust for war. As a result, he is exceedingly cruel to his opponents, rarely holding back unless instructed to, and goes directly for his adversary's weak points. Jinwoo then releases Byung-gyu from his army, allowing him to rest in peace. It's interesting to note that Jinwoo initially chose not to participate in this massive raid because throughout the story he is attempting to avoid drawing too much attention to himself and to his unique power. Nevertheless, with his struggle against the Ant King aired for all to see, Jinwoo can no longer escape being recognized. Jinwoo is hailed as a hero by some for being the sole reason the raid was successful, but he is also detested by others for taking too long to intervene. After the 4th Jeju Island raid, he is recognized as one of the most powerful hunters in Asia, cementing his position as one of the strongest hunters in the series. This really was such an amazing and important arc, and I feel like I need to take a little break to fully comprehend just what happened. For those who read this while it was coming out, I'm not sure how you did it. The Recruitment arc. The Recruitment arc is brief, but it provides a welcome break from the pure chaos that was Jeju-do. We see the aftermath of the Jeju Island arc and how the characters cope with the consequences of the raid. Jinwoo is now officially recognized as a national level hunter after successfully clearing the Jeju Island Gate. This feat catches the attention of other guilds on the global level, and they now all seek to contact him. Jinwoo is also invited to America and promised a position among the world's most powerful guilds. In exchange, they give Jinwoo the opportunity to be reawakened to greater strength by the famed psychic Norma Selner. Norma is a middle-aged woman with a dark complexion, curling black hair, and vibrant turquoise eyes. Norma is courteous and kind, and she is also patriotic, and she has used her unique abilities to recruit a large number of foreign S-rank hunters for the American government. Although Norma possesses magical abilities, they are not suitable for fighting, so she is not a hunter. However, the abilities she does possess are well beyond those observed in hunters and are essentially unique, making her a very valuable asset for the American government. Norma has the ability to intentionally raise a hunter's power above their natural limit by 20 to 30%, and this is a unique feat in this world. Despite its incredible qualities, this skill has several downsides. For starters, it includes 3 discrete steps, so the procedure is progressive rather than immediate. It also depletes Norma's mana supplies, causing her to rest for a lengthy amount of time before using it again, and limiting her upgrading to only about 3 to 4 hunters every year. Finally, this skill is only effective against people who derive their powers from an external source. Norma can also see into the future to a limited extent through dreams and visions, and she can activate this ability at will on a person by touching their hands. Jinwoo initially encounters the American upgrader during Byung-gyu's funeral, but when Norma attempts to utilize her upgrading power on Jinwoo, it not only fails, but it also reveals something terrifying about his soul. After Jinwoo left the room and went home, Norma, who was still horrified by what she just witnessed, told Michael that Jinwoo's capabilities are limitless, which meant that her skills would not work on him. This is where we get the first evidence of the Shadow Monarch, a creature whose fate is connected to Jinwoo. With nothing left to do, Jinwoo returns to South Korea and establishes his own guild. The Ajin Guild Arc. While the earlier arcs concentrated on various foes who simply helped to level Jinwoo up, the Ajin Guild arc is when things become serious as the true antagonists arrive. Jinwoo co-founds the Ajin Guild with Jinho, and the guild is named after Jinwoo's sister, Jin-ah. Get it? Jin. Anyway, the Ajin Guild is instantly the most powerful guild in Korea. But unlike the other elite guilds in other nations, this guild only has 3 official members, with just one of them being an S-rank hunter. But with Jinwoo's shadow troops included, this guild outperforms every other guild in terms of strength and size, making the Ajin Guild the most powerful guild in the world. Ajin consists of the S-rank Jinwoo, the D-rank Jinho, and the A-rank Sohyun. The main reason Jinwoo started his own guild was to be able to access dungeons alone without the minimum group restrictions imposed by the Korean Hunters Association. Cha chooses to try out for Jinwoo's newly created guild because she admires his strength, among other things, but Jinwoo rejects her. And he does this even after she beats Igris, one of Jinwoo's most powerful shadow hunters. Talk about dropping the ball, my dude. But Jinwoo chooses to hire Jinho's cousin, Sohyun, as a secretary, which is what brings the guild's total membership to 3. Normally, this would be insufficient to meet the guild's 8 hunter criterion for raid competition. But Gun-hee makes an exception for Ajin due to Jinwoo's significance to the entire country. The plot soon thickens as Jinna's school becomes the focal point of something sinister. Orcs break through a dungeon that appeared in the school, wreak havoc and destruction, and kill many students. Jinna herself is one of the students still trapped within the school. Just as an orc was about to kill her, Jinwoo's shadow soldiers thankfully appeared to defend her. Jinwoo noticed that something was wrong and that his sister was in danger while he was still at the A-rank dungeon with the Knights Guild. And so he rushes to the school to defeat the orcs and save the students in the school. While Jinwoo takes out the orcs, he leaves Beru at the A-rank dungeon, and Beru effortlessly slays the dungeon boss, the Arch Lich. This arc is short on action compared to many others, but it accomplishes its goal of establishing Jinwoo's new guild and presenting him to the world as a solo hunter. The Double Dungeon Arc. In order to proceed, we must return to where it all started, and this time everything is made clear. While there are some battle sequences in this arc, The Double Dungeon arc mostly aims to provide long-awaited answers for us and for Jinwoo. A massive gate has opened in the heart of Japan, and the strongest hunters from around the world are being summoned to seal it. Meanwhile, Jinwoo has grown increasingly perplexed about his newfound skills. So, Jinwoo returns to the Double Dungeon, also known as the Kartanon Temple, to discover the truth behind his powers. Another advantage of going back to the beginning is that we get to see those epic statues again. Honestly, even after seeing a wide variety of monsters over the course of the series, nothing beats these guys in terms of sheer creepiness. Back inside the Double Dungeon, Jinwoo meets the Architect, who informs him about the Shadow Monarch that dwells inside him. The Architect, also known as Kandiaru, was the hidden boss of the Double Dungeon and the moderator of the system. Kandiaru appeared as a giant stone statue of a hooded angel with 6 wings that could gain extra arms for a total of 8. He also had bright red eyes, black sclera, and a thin oblong-shaped purple gemstone in the center of his forehead. He had a weird and cruel smile, similar to that of the statue of God. After Jinwoo struck him in the nose, a section of his mask slipped off, revealing his true face beneath, which had whitish blue skin, light blue eyes, and dark blue sclera. Kandiaru was a highly psychotic and narcissistic guy who took tremendous pleasure in his job and had a contemptuous attitude towards mankind, as evidenced by his outburst of wrath and bewilderment when he realized that Jinwoo was actually winning against him. Kandiaru invited Jinwoo back to the Double Dungeon so that Ashbourne could utilize him as a vessel and eventually descend into the human realm, as was always intended. When Jinwoo came, the Architect decided to put him to the test by having him battle his puppets, which included the Statue of God. After Jinwoo easily vanquished them all, Kandiaru exposed himself as the final test and issued an urgent errand for Jinwoo that would kill him if he did not complete it within the next 10 minutes. Despite initially being outmatched, Jinwoo was finally able to take the upper hand on Kandiaru and beat him with 2 minutes and 14 seconds left on the quest timer. Jinwoo also learned about the true lore of that world, and about the rulers who slaughtered the Absolute Being to seize his power for themselves. The world began with light and darkness. The Absolute Being formed the emissaries of God out of light, a group of basically virtuous creatures who served him. The Absolute Being also formed the 8 sovereigns, also known as the Monarchs, out of darkness. Because their natures were diametrically opposed, the emissaries and sovereigns were always in battle. The emissaries were created to keep the world going and to guarantee that new life was formed and preserved. Meanwhile, the sovereigns were created to destroy the entire world, and as their conflicting natures collided, so did they. This started the endless conflict between the emissaries and the sovereigns. To finally end the war, the emissaries addressed the Absolute Being and implored him to join them in their effort to remove the Monarchs, or at the very least, to give them the authority to annihilate their opponents. The emissaries appealed, promising to deliver the heads of the sovereigns to the Absolute Being in homage to its strength and splendor. However, the Absolute Being ignored their request. At this moment, the emissaries realized that to the Absolute Being, the never-ending conflict was only a sort of amusement, and the conclusion was irrelevant. It appeared that there would be no resolution and that the conflict would go on indefinitely. Saddened by this realization, the emissaries made a choice. They would murder the Absolute Being and take his power, which would allow them to bring the fight to a conclusion. Whether they faced the Absolute Being or continued the conflict, the prospect of death was always present, so they opted to confront and slay the Absolute Being and finally end all the war and suffering. After rebelling against their own creator, the emissaries declared themselves overlords or rulers. Among the numerous emissaries, one opted to oppose them. His name was Ashbourne. Unfortunately for him, his might alone was insufficient to defeat all the rulers on his own. Before he died, Ashbourne recognized that the Absolute Being had a dark force, but by the time he returned to confront the rulers, the Absolute Being had already perished. Following his resurrection as a creature capable of controlling darkness, Ashbourne joined the Monarchs to confront the rulers. The power balance had already shifted after the rulers captured the King of Giants, and Ashbourne's arrival on the Monarch side would completely alter the situation. So he resumed his war as the Shadow Monarch, fighting against his own kind, the rulers. But both his adversaries and supporters feared his might, and 2 of the Monarchs actually betrayed him. After he was deceived by the Monarchs, the rulers sought Ashbourne's forgiveness. This turn of events frustrated Ashbourne because he really didn't know what to do at this point. Frustrated by his limited alternatives, he went into hiding with the sovereigns to reclaim his authority. The infighting between the Monarchs and Ashbourne gave the rulers an edge, and by the time Ashbourne regained his authority, the Monarchs' armies had already been decimated, so the Monarch of Destruction ordered them to cease fighting while they proceeded to rebuild their forces. As a result, the architect designed the system to provide the Shadow Monarch with an appropriate vessel for inhabiting a physical body. But with all of that said, Jinwoo isn't going down without a fight. He is not going to just allow himself to become a mindless vessel for some other entity. So he eventually murders the architect and seizes control of his own fate. Kandiaru could only scream at Jinwoo in fury as the latter slashed him to pieces, killed him, and then ruined his body. As he faded away, Kandiaru cursed Jinwoo with a prophecy that if the Monarchs emerged from concealment and started their quest to destroy the human world, he would perish at their hands. However, this wasn't enough to discourage Jinwoo, who just accepted it and continued to confront Kandiaru's remaining puppets in combat. We're really seeing more of Jinwoo's personality now. He was more expressive at first, but since he awoke, he's been a lot more straight-faced, so it's really good to finally see more of our boy's personality in these epic later arcs. Overall, this was an excellent arc with increased stakes, fantastic battle sequences, and answers that we really needed. The Japan Crisis arc. This arc was all about one thing: fighting, and lots of it. The massive S-rank gate in the heart of Japan finally opens and enormous giants enter, inflicting devastation on the huge city of Shinjuku. Given that they are usually the dungeon bosses of top-tier A-rank gates, the average giant is strong enough to compete and even defeat an average S-rank hunter. This means that even the S-rank attack squad is unable to effectively counter the massive threat. As a result, Jinwoo has to go and fight the giants himself, and he eventually beats their master before entering the gate to locate Legia, the true ruler of the giants. Legia was a strong guy nearly twice the size of the ordinary adult human, with bluish-gray skin, long tangled black hair, a scraggy beard, and bright red eyes. He wore nothing except a long, ragged white loincloth. Legia had a weird sense of humor, and he began laughing hysterically when he realized a fellow monarch had discovered him. He was also highly crafty, nearly convincing Jinwoo to release him from prison. Legia, who is also known as the Monarch of Beginning, reveals to Jinwoo the origins of the gates and warns him of an impending war between the rulers and monarchs. 10 years before the main storyline, the rulers used their last resort to spawn gates and expose mankind to the existence of magical beasts, which allowed a massive amount of mana to enter the human world and gradually saturate it with enough magic to withstand the brunt of their war with the monarchs. At the same time, they bestowed their abilities to 7 human vessels, who went on to become the world's strongest hunters. But because they still didn't know if Ashbourne was on their side, the rulers decided not to take risks and assigned Song Il-hwan, one of their 7 vessels, with slaying the next Shadow Monarch who was about to be born. Legia also described how he was shackled and imprisoned within the gate by the rulers. Legia swore to fight alongside Jinwoo in the next conflict, even joining the two of them with a spell that prevented them from lying to one another. He also revealed that Jinwoo could not transform him into a shadow soldier even if he tried, since he was a spiritual being without an actual body. Unfortunately for Legia, Jinwoo was not very trusting, and he found the essence stone in the back of his neck. Legia attempted to murder Jinwoo when his cover was blown, but Jinwoo quickly evaded all of his assaults and beheaded him in a single strike, causing his body to shatter into shards of light, and this effectively cleared the gate. Something to note is that Jinwoo's look has also changed in this arc. While I really enjoyed his blue aura, adding a purple aura to complement his newly acquired black heart makes perfect sense, and it looks even cooler in my opinion. The International Guild Conference arc. Following the events of the previous arc, this arc provides us with all of the information we need to proceed directly to the series finale. After learning about the imminent war between the monarchs and rulers, Jinwoo attends the International Guild Conference and presents his findings to guild leaders from all around the world. Since Jinwoo travels to America to attend the International Guild Conference, we inevitably encounter both new and familiar faces. Dong-soo and his guild boss Thomas Andre make an unwelcome return. Other characters from America who have previously been introduced also make an appearance, such as Jigang, whose face we finally get to see. While many people fear Jinwoo, they recognize that they have no option but to accept his power since he is their only chance at actually winning. Jinwoo then summons the body of Kamish, the first S-rank magical beast, but due to his physical condition, he collapses immediately after summoning. When the Bureau announced that Jinwoo will represent Korea at the next International Guild Conference, Thomas called Hwang to his office and told him not to meddle with Jinwoo. Although Dong-soo appeared to accept this request, he had previously devised a strategy to exact revenge for his brother's murder by attacking Jinho instead. As a result, when Jinwoo was away at the Bureau, Dong-soo kidnapped Jinho from his hotel and took him to an abandoned factory on the outskirts of town. But Jinwoo spotted Dong-soo quickly thanks to his shadow warriors and teleported to him via shadow exchange. Despite being clearly outmatched, Dong-soo refused to back down and sought to assault Jinwoo, who had attacked him first and refused to answer his questions. Unfortunately for Dong-soo, this was ineffective, as Jinwoo effortlessly battled his blows away and mercilessly pummeled him during the fight. Thomas arrived at the workplace and ordered Jinwoo to release him, but Jinwoo refused and hurled Dong-soo into the distance to be dealt with later. After Thomas attacked Jinwoo, the two engaged in a brutal fight. Jinwoo's strength caused Thomas to bleed, prompting him to go all out and use reinforcement. However, Jinwoo still easily defeated Thomas with his bare hands. Jinwoo then killed Dong-soo and raised him as a soldier of his shadow army under the alias Greed. Say what you want about Jinwoo, but he's not your typical shonen protagonist who doesn't want to kill anyone and just wants to do the right thing all the time. Meanwhile, the Monarchs initiated their rematch with the rulers in the human world by killing off Christopher Reed, one of the 7 rulers' vessels. And so, one story point concludes, while another intensifies. This arc did finish on a cliffhanger, which is unusual for solo leveling given how arcs conclude and continue into the following one, but it ended up being a really great lead-in into the epic war arc. The Monarchs War Arc. This arc was something, and by something I mean something extremely awesome, because this was both intense and emotional. We now have all the necessary context for this arc, at least for the time being. We've learned about the great conflict between the rulers and the Monarchs, as well as Jinwoo's part in all of this, but now it is time for war. The Monarchs continue to search for the rulers' vessels in the human world, slaying one in Brazil and another in Korea. The Frost Monarch's plans are put into action, and the conflict between mankind, the rulers, and the Monarchs officially begins. Sillad was the king of Snowfolk and the Monarch of Frost. He was a robust ancient elf with blue skin, long silver hair that dangled over the right side of his face, blank white eyes, and wide ears. He dressed in a worn white cloak with a black collar over a ripped white shirt, ragged black trousers, and black boots. Sillad was an arrogant and pompous individual who disliked taking risks and getting ahead of himself. He was also hinted to have a disdain for unneeded fighting. When he faced adversaries who were stronger than him, he tended to behave anxious and even reckless. Because this arc is titled Monarchs War, we are inevitably exposed to the Monarchs we have yet to meet. That group also contains the original Shadow Monarch, Ashbourne, which was a welcome surprise. Ashbourne was a massive, muscular shadow warrior with flame-like purple hair, brilliant purple eyes, 2 curled black horns, and keen claws. He also donned jet black armor, a long smoky black cloak, and he carried a pure black sword. As a ruler, Ashbourne was a powerful white knight with big white wings, long silver hair, and dazzling white eyes. He also donned silver robes, light tan armor, and a grayish blue cloak, and he carried a white sword with a light tan guard and a gray hilt. I'm definitely getting some heavy biblical fallen angel vibes from Ashbourne. But yeah, Ashbourne had a strong desire for peace, and he was tired of the never-ending war between the Monarchs and the rulers. So he eventually entrusted both his ambitions and his powers to a human in the hopes of putting an end to the bloodshed once and for all. Despite this though, he was blindly loyal to the absolute being, and he continued to fight on the latter's behalf even after learning the truth. During the battle against the Monarchs, Jinwoo is killed by the Frost and Beast Monarchs' combined efforts, at which point the Shadow Monarch comes before Jinwoo. Ashbourne then discloses the complete truth about the events that led to the conflict. To keep things brief, Ashbourne introduced himself to Jinwoo and explained everything he needed to know, including his backstory, the true identity of their enemies, and the reason Jinwoo was chosen to be both his vessel and his successor. Jinwoo was chosen as the player and eventually the successor of the Shadow Monarch Ashbourne due to his extreme weakness as a hunter, which constantly put him on the verge of death, making him the ideal vessel to inherit Ashbourne's shadow abilities. Essentially, his near constant exposure to life-threatening situations made him highly compatible with the Shadow Monarch's powers. Jinwoo, being one of the weakest hunters, was regularly in danger of death, which matched Ashbourne's goal for a vessel capable of fully embracing the power of shadows. Despite his weaknesses, Jinwoo displayed incredible perseverance and a drive to keep going, which made him an ideal choice to wield Ashbourne's great power. In his initial contact with the system, Jinwoo opted to stay behind and sacrifice himself to rescue his team, which of course demonstrated his selflessness, and this resonated with Ashbourne's need for a suitable successor. When he was finished, Ashbourne offered Jinwoo two options: live in his own personal fantasy world for eternity, or finish his fight with the Monarchs. Naturally, Jinwoo chose the latter option, and Ashbourne wished him farewell as he soared back to reality, reborn with the Shadow Monarch's power. Meanwhile, Jinwoo's father, Il-hwan, comes just in time to defend his son's corpse and fight both Monarchs alone. Jinwoo then uses the Shadow Monarch's ability to revive himself just before the Monarchs slay Il-hwan. Jinwoo then easily defeats the Frost and Beast Monarchs, and Il-hwan dies in his arms after apologizing to his son for his absence for so long. This arc absolutely had it all. Action, shocks, twists, and big reveals that ultimately set up exactly where the story is going for its epic final conclusion. And again, at least our boy Jinwoo got to have some kind of moment with his father, unlike poor Deku from MHA. His father went out for milk before the series started and then just never came back. The final battle arc. And now it is time for the final battle. The last arc ended with the climactic fight just getting started, with Jinwoo in cheat mode, having leveled up to his greatest conceivable form and no longer having any limitations. Jinwoo is now powerful enough to face the toughest opponent in the series and the final antagonist of solo leveling, all thanks to his Shadow Monarch power. With the other Monarchs out of the picture, Jinwoo and Antares, the King of Dragons and Monarch of Destruction, begin the final battle. Shortly after Jinwoo slew the three Monarchs that succeeded him in Korea, Antares learned from Yogumont that the Shadow Monarch had turned against them and destroyed the majority of their armies. Undaunted, Antares resolved to confront Ashbourne's vessel and ordered his dragon army to prepare for battle. Antares was a tall and powerful man with long red hair, a short red beard, bright red eyes, and dark crimson claws. He also donned reddish silver armor, a high collar, and a reddish brown tailcoat. Antares, the Monarch of Destruction, reveled in the carnage he inflicted with his abilities. Due to his practically unparalleled power, he normally behaved casually and confidently, and he was not the sort to lose his cool. Like the other Monarchs, he despised mankind and was willing to destroy them all just to provoke the Shadow Monarch and confront him in battle. Despite his bloodlust, Antares possessed a sense of honor and was prepared to bargain with anyone powerful enough to impress him in combat. And despite his own flaws, Antares showed concern for his minions and was appalled by anybody who used them for experimental goals. He also appeared to believe in blood purity and had no regard for dragons with mixed origins. When Jinwoo came on the battlefield's eastern front, Antares confronted him and ordered his army of 10 million to surround him, believing that even the Shadow Monarch could not manage that many adversaries at once. Jinwoo countered the attack with Dragon's Fear, immobilizing all of the minions, including Yogumont, before using Shadow Exchange to bring Antares to a secluded island in Japan. The two then began fighting, and despite Jinwoo's attempts, Antares simply countered his attacks, one by one. Although Jinwoo's attacks just rebounded off of his skin, Antares was pleased by his opponent's strategic abilities. As a result, he paused his attacks and promised to save mankind from destruction if Jinwoo helped him destroy the rulers. Jinwoo refused to accept the offer and criticized Antares for pretending to be polite, and then the conflict resumed. As the combat continued, Antares became increasingly irritated by Jinwoo's stubbornness to submit, especially as Jinwoo's strikes were still having no effect on him. Ultimately, Antares lost his cool, threatened to rip Jinwoo to bits, and turn him into Drake food if he didn't just give in. But in his rage and arrogance, Antares failed to detect that Jinwoo wasn't just attacking mindlessly, and so unintentionally he left himself wide open, which allowed Jinwoo to slash him almost entirely in two with his father's knife. I bet Deku would kill to have anything from his father, let alone a knife. But moving on. Surprised that the Shadow Monarch had been able to harm him, Antares noticed the ruler's armies in the skies and realized that Jinwoo had been aiming for this from the start. Their epic battle had distorted space to such an extent that the rulers could now enter the human world in their raw forms. Now entirely encircled, Antares tried one more attack on Jinwoo, but he was stopped by the rulers, who fatally pierced him with spears. Realizing he had lost and that the rulers had triumphed once more, Antares stated that he had no hope of winning from the start. And then he succumbed to his wounds and died, allowing his body to shatter into bits and drift away in the wind. Jinwoo defeated Antares and the other monarchs with the ruler's assistance. But he then chose to utilize a heavenly artifact known as the Cup of Reincarnation to rewind time in order to prevent the devastation that was caused during this war. And so Jinwoo returns the world to a period before the gates began to spawn by defeating the monarchs in another reality and becoming the unsung hero who quietly rescued the entire world. As the rulers congratulate Jinwoo and thank him for his assistance, he requests to use the Cup of Reincarnation one final time, stating that he has lost too many people in the conflict and he desires to bring them back. Jinwoo's urge to turn back time reflects his desire to save not just those close to him, such as Go Gun-hee and his father, but also the many lives that were lost throughout the globe. And I'm not only talking about since the start of the big battle against the monarchs, but ever since the gates first appeared. The rulers warn Jinwoo that if this happens, the monarchs will be resurrected with their memories intact, and that if Jinwoo fails, the cup will be depleted and cannot be used once more. Jinwoo accepts, and the rulers utilize the Cup of Reincarnation for the final time. Jinwoo then gets to return to the body of his younger self, and spend some time as a typical schoolboy before heading to the dimensional gap to confront the monarchs. In this new timeline, Jinwoo fights the monarchs for 27 years before facing Antares again. With all of the monarchs finally destroyed in the dimensional gap, Earth's catastrophe is quietly avoided, and Jinwoo returns to a regular world free of giants, magical monsters, and hunters. During all this time, only 2 years have passed in the actual world. Jinwoo returns and resumes his usual life, albeit his appearance progressively changes to make him look older. As the story progresses, Jinwoo increasingly reconnects with characters from the previous timeline, including Gun-hee, Jinho, Ju-hee, Jin-chul, and most crucially, Cha. Many characters who would have perished if they had become hunters enjoy long and fulfilled lives, with only the ruler's vessels knowing of Jinwoo's sacrifice. And this is how the story of Solo Leveling ends, but we do get an epilogue. The Epilogue. This arc is only 2 chapters long and depicts the aftermath of the final fight. This was sort of bittersweet, and after so many arcs and fights and growth, we find ourselves back at the beginning. Because Jinwoo used the Cup of Reincarnation to hunt down the monarchs for 27 years, meaning that he put a stop to the ruler-monarchs war and to the gates appearing and to hunters existing and so on, we now get to see Jinwoo reliving his boyhood, but as an ageless, immortal being. Jinwoo meets Cha at school, and they later marry and have a son named Suho. The epilogue follows Sung Suho as a high school student for a brief period of time. Jinwoo decides to train his son, and he actually uses a similar approach to the system by placing Suho in dungeon-like circumstances which require his son to battle through his shadow army and level up along the way. Ultimately, he faces the final boss, which is Jinwoo himself. This is where the story of Solo Leveling ends in the manhwa, and this leads us into Solo Leveling Ragnarok, the Solo Leveling sequel that is still ongoing right now. Solo Leveling Ragnarok focuses on Jinwoo's son Suho, who first appears in the epilogue. The story begins 3 years after the epilogue, just after Suho graduates from high school, and continues as Suho breaches the seal Jinwoo set on his powers when he was a child. Solo Leveling Ragnarok adds new, greater antagonists in the form of the Absolute Beings, also known as the Itarim, beings who want to attack the world in the absence of its original creator and seize the Shadow Monarch's abilities. As a result, Jinwoo is compelled to cope with these intruders from outer space. While he's gone, Jinwoo delegated Beru to Suho, who is entrusted with dealing with the Itarim's apostles wreaking devastation on Earth, all the while searching for his mother, who has inexplicably disappeared. And that is it for the entire timeline and lore of Solo Leveling, and what an epic story it was. Let us know down in the comments if you'd like to see more content on Solo Leveling and Solo Leveling Ragnarok here on the channel. If you're looking for another epic Solo Leveling video to watch next, check out our full breakdown of the relationship between Jinwoo and Cha, link on screen and in the description. Don't forget to like and leave a comment for that YouTube algorithm. And again, if you want to see more Solo Leveling content here on the channel, please subscribe right now. When I see that content on a certain series is getting a lot of subscribers, That tells me that you guys want to see more videos like that one, and that is exactly what I will deliver.